guilty. We're not going to bother with the priest, or he's going to tell you about the priest because the priest was man too, and he committed sin as well. So same thing the regular guy had to do was the same thing that the priest had to do. But skip now to verse 27, and we're going to pick up just the ordinary old Joe. Go ahead and read on.
And if any one of the common people sin through ignorance.
Now that's any one of the common people. You know, he ain't no priest, he ain't no king, he ain't no nothing. He just one a plain old common guy. Go ahead and read on.
While he doeth somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which ought not to be done, and be guilty, or if his sin which he hath sinned come to his knowledge, then he shall bring his offering, a kid of the goats, a female without blemish, for sin which he hath committed.
Now then, you know, if he sinned, then he had to come up with a sacrifice, in other words. You know, there was something that he needed to do in order to be forgiven for his sin, and what needed to be done was some blood needed to be shed. Go ahead and read on.
Verse 29. And he shall lay his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and slay the sin offering in the place of the burnt offering. And the priest
offering, it was called a sin offering. So he had to come up with his sin offering, and then the offering had to be killed, and the blood had to be sprinkled, and all of that in order for his sin to be forgiven him. Continue reading.
And the priest shall take of the blood thereof with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and shall pour out all the blood thereof at the bottom of the altar. And he shall take away all the fat thereof, as the fat is taken away from the sacrifice of peace offering. And the priest shall burn it upon the altar for a sweet savor unto the Lord. And the priest shall make an atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him.
Now this is known as the animal sacrifice law, and it was good, as we are going to find out, until Jesus died. And when Jesus came and died, then he nailed it to the cross. And that is all that he nailed to the cross. The Bible don't say nothing about him nailing any other laws to the cross. But now this offering, it was called a sin offering, and it was good until Jesus died, because Jesus even said that himself. You know, Jesus healed some man, and he told him to go back and offer up a sacrifice unto Moses.
Yes,
you understand what I'm saying? Because what I had Moses to give you, it was still good until I died. Now, let's go to Isaiah chapter 53, and we'll begin at verse 7. 53 and 7. You know, we just dealing with this just so you can understand what law it is that the Lord nailed to the cross. We're going to start reading at Isaiah 53, and we'll begin reading at verse 7. You know, because people want to say Jesus nailed the law to the cross, in which he did, but they want to make it be the moral law, which means that you can do anything you want to do now, and God somehow is going to accept that. But truly, that is not the case. Start reading at Isaiah 53, and we'll begin at verse 7, and this is dealing with the death of Jesus here. Start reading at verse 7. Go ahead and read.
He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth.
Now this is when they brought him up ready to crucify him. He was oppressed, he was afflicted, and he didn't open his mouth. Go ahead and read on.
He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is dumb. So he openeth not his mouth.
And that is what happened. He was brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and truly it was a slaughter. Make no mistake about it. You just go and read about it. You can clearly see it truly was a slaughter. Continue reading.
He was taken from prison and from judgment. And who shall declare his generation?
Go ahead.
For he was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people was he stricken.
Now this lets you know he was going to die, and that he would die for the sins of the people. This is clearly Jesus that we're reading about here. Continue reading though.
And he made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich in his death.
Go ahead.
Because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He hath put him to grief, when thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin.
Well, we just read over in Leviticus that the animal was the sin offering, right?
Yes, sir.
But now Jesus came and died, and he became the sin offering. So therefore, there was no need for animals anymore.
That's right.
No need to kill animals anymore. So what happened with the animal sacrifice law? He took it out of the way, and he nailed it to the cross. Let's go and read about it here in Daniel chapter 9. And we'll begin reading at verse 26. I just want to make sure you understand what law it is that the Bible said that he nailed to the cross. I know what the preacher done said. The preacher always done told you that he nailed all of them to the cross except for the tithe law. Because he want to make sure you bring that money in there every Sunday. So that one is still good, even though it's in the Old Testament now. That's right. He told you a long time ago that the Old Testament been fulfilled already, and you don't need to do nothing written in the Old Testament But I guarantee you, Malachi ain't been fulfilled. He gonna tell you to bring them tithes on in here. So now if the Old Testament been fulfilled already, why are you going in Malachi to get the tithes?
Right, brother.
Let's start reading here at Daniel chapter 9. We're going to pick it up at verse 26. And the book going to make it very clear here what law it is that Jesus nailed to the cross. Now, this is the message that came directly from God by the hand of the angel, for the angel to give it unto Daniel. This is not something that Daniel came up with. This is something that came from God, because Daniel had prayed to the Lord, and he had asked the Lord, what about his people Israel, and what about the city of Jerusalem? And the Lord sent the angel Gabriel to tell him. So this message came directly from God. Start reading at Daniel 9 and 26. Go ahead and read on.
And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off.
Now who is Messiah? That is Jesus. Cut off. Cut off what? Cut off out of the land of the living, as we just read in the 53rd chapter of Isaiah. Continue reading.
But not for himself.
And who was he killed for? That Isaiah told you. He was killed for the sins of the people.
Yes,
go ahead and continue reading.
And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war desolations are determined.
So now, not too long after Jesus was crucified, the Romans came down there and they destroyed Jerusalem. And that is what this is talking about here. So now we are reading about his crucifixion right here. Because how did Jesus die? He died on the cross, didn't he? Go ahead and continue reading.
And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblations to cease.
And by the way, Jesus died in the middle of the week. He didn't die on no Good Friday like you've been told. He died in the middle of the week, in the middle of a literal week, as well as in the middle of a prophetic week. Prophetic week is 3.5 years. The middle of it would be 3.5 years. The midst of a literal week would be Wednesday. So now that's when he died. And notice what he said. He would cause sacrifices and oblations to cease. Ain't said nothing about no cleanliness law, did it?
No, sir.
Ain't said nothing about the dietary law, the moral law, or none of them law. Only thing he said was sacrifices and oblations. And if he had caused any other law to cease, then he would have told you that. But he's telling you right here, sacrifice and oblations, those are the laws that he nailed to the cross. Therefore, all of the other laws, they are still good. Let's go over in the New Testament for a minute. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 10. Read some of Paul's writing here. Hebrews chapter 10, we're going to pick it up at verse 1. And just show you what Paul wrote here, what the Lord inspired Paul to write. And Paul is quoting, by the way, from the Old Testament, Psalms chapter 40. But we're going to begin here at Hebrews chapter 10, and we'll begin reading at verse 1. Hebrews 10, and we'll begin at verse 1. We're going to just teach you how it really is, people. That's what we do here. You do whatever you want to do with it. We're going to make certain that you understand what the Bible says. Let's start reading, though, at Hebrews chapter 10 and begin at verse 1. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret right this minute. If you don't do it according to the Bible, it means absolutely nothing. You understand that? You are wasting your time. You may as well eat, drink, and be merry, because it don't mean nothing. God set the standard, and that is the standard that he expects everybody to try and follow. You don't decide how you're going to serve God. I don't decide how I'm going to serve God. God decides how he wants us to serve him. Only thing you decide is whether or not you're going to obey his orders or not. Sir. That's the only decision that you have. And if you choose not to, then you're not serving him, so don't expect no reward from him.
That's right.
And only if you are being obedient unto his commandments, then can you expect a good reward from it. You're going to get a reward whether it's good or bad. But if you want a good one, you better follow them laws, because they are still good. Let's start reading here at Hebrews chapter 10. We're going to pick it up at verse 1. Show you what the Lord inspired Paul to write. Go ahead and read.
For the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never with those sacrifices which they offered year by year continually make the comers thereunto perfect.
Well, right here in this first verse, he tell you what law it is that he's dealing with. Because it said, can never with those sacrifices that they offer year by year continually make the comers thereunto perfect. Therefore, he is dealing with the sacrificial law. Go ahead and continue reading.
For then would they not have ceased to be offered.
Go ahead.
Because that the worshipers once purged should have had no more conscience of sins.
Go ahead.
But in those sacrifices there is a remembrance again made of sins every year.
Go ahead.
For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and of goats should take away sins.
Now, you know, even